Sir, principal sir, time to 3 hole. আমি কেটাত start কৰিম?
You can start now. Start কৰি দিয়া.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Hello, everyone. A very good afternoon to one and all present here. This is Rosa Ahmed, and on behalf of the Department of History, BN College, Dhubri, Assam, I would like to welcome you all to today's webinar. The topic of today's webinar is Understanding Pandemics, a Historical Perspective. The topic is such that will draw everybody's attention in the present scenario owing to the global health crisis. And it is a privilege and honor for us that we have with us today two renowned scholars. We have Professor Rajiv Hendik, sir, Head of the Department of History, Guwahati University. A warm welcome to you, sir.
Yes.
We also have with us Dr. Sanghamitra Chaudhary, ma'am, Department of Peace and Conflict Studies and Management, Sikkim Central University. A warm welcome to you, ma'am. I would now like to request Dr. Dhruvo Chakraborty, sir, Honorable Principal, BN College, Dhubri, Assam, to kindly offer the welcome address to our honorable resource persons. Over to you, sir.
So first of all, a very good afternoon to all of you. I would like to welcome all of you to this. Am I audible?
Yes.
Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
So I would like to welcome all of you to this webinar, Understanding Pandemic and Historical Perspective, organized by the Department of History of BN College, Dhubri. We are extremely grateful to Professor Rajiv Hendik and Dr. Sanghamitra Chaudhary for accepting our offer to act as resource person in this particular webinar. We are also thankful to all the participants for participating in this particular webinar. And in this pandemic situation, we all know that this is not the first pandemic in this planet, and neither this will be the last one. And it is very important for all of us to understand the historical perspective of pandemic so that we can act properly in this particular one and in future as well. So I hope that the discussions and deliberations in this particular webinar will be helpful for all of us to understand the pandemics properly. And with that note, welcoming all the participants to this webinar, I like to declare this particular webinar as open. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for offering the welcome address to the honorable resource persons of today's webinar. For the first half of today's session, Professor Rajiv Hendik, sir, will be speaking, and for the second half, Madam Sanghamitra Chaudhary will be speaking. I would now like to request Mr. Ravindra Das, Head of the Department of History, BN College, Dhubri, Assam, to kindly give a brief introduction of our honorable resource person for the first half, Professor Rajiv Hendik, sir. Over to Ravindra Das, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Ahmed. Now I'm going to brief introduction of Professor Rajiv Hendik. Good afternoon to you all. Thank you, respected Principal Dr. Dhruvo Chakraborty, sir, for giving the chance to conduct the webinar. Thanks, Professor Hendik, sir, for being with us. It is my great pleasure to introduce Professor Rajiv Hendik, Head of the Department of History, Guwahati University, as a resource person of today's webinar, Understanding Pandemics, a Historical Perspective. Professor Rajiv Hendik started his career as a lecturer of history in MDK Girls College, Dibrugarh, and working there since 1993 to 1995. He also had been working as a lecturer of Dibrugarh University from 1995 to 2000. Occupied the position of Deputy Registrar Academic from 2000 to 2009 in Dibrugarh University, holding position of Associate Professor of History in Dibrugarh University from 2009 to 2013. At present, he is holding the position of Head Department of History, Guwahati University. During his journey of career, he received numbers of awards and recognition like Srijak Kumar Bhuiyan Award in 1991 for secured first-class first position in MA under Guwahati University. His area of interest are environmental history, oral history, peace and conflict studies, ethnohistory, and so on. His popular publication, British Forest Policy in Assam, could able to establish him as an environmental historian. Under his guideship, 7 scholars got PhD award, and lot of PhD scholars has been pursuing PhD work under his guideship. 3 scholars got MPhil degree under his supervision. As an academician, he did major research project, published a lot of research articles in different historical journals, published chapter in edited books. He also occupied important position in corporate life as well as life members of Indian History Congress, Northeastern Indian History Association, Association of South Asian Environmental Histories, Oral Histories Association of India. That also. Now, I would like to request Hendrik sir to start his presentation. Thank you, sir.
Okay, a very good afternoon to all of you. Dr. Dhruva Chakraborty, respected principal of BN College, Dhubri. Dr. Sanghamitra Chaudhary, as far as I remember, we did some correspondence long back. So it's good to meet again over this platform. Professor A.M. Mondal, the Vice Principal of BN College, Rabindra Das, the Head of the Department of History, and Ibrahim Ali Mondal, and other faculty members of BN College, esteemed participants. At the very beginning, I think it is necessary on my part to also inform you that during the last few days, we are experiencing quite a lot of load shedding as well as internet disruptions. So the network is quite bad. I hope it sustains during the course of the entire session because I'll be continuing till the end. So in case something happens and in case I am not audible, I would like to request the technicians who are looking after the entire program to please inform so that this can be we can rectify the problem. The topic which has been given, understanding pandemic, a historical perspective, it's indeed a very, very, I should say, very popular topic. And it has been during the last couple of months, we are indeed looking back to these various pandemics in history, trying to learn from them, trying to see what went before us. And as very rightly stated by the respected principal, this is not the last pandemic. And pandemics were there before. Therefore, it's necessary to have a historical perspective. And just let me tell you that we have till now, in this COVID situation, every day, there are numbers coming up about the number of infections, about the number of deaths, and we know. Uh, excuse me, I think there is some disturbance in the audio. There is some disturbance with the audio. I think we should all mute actually.
Yes, please, participants, kindly mute your audios, please.
Because this interference, yeah. So, just on this pandemic was declared, the current pandemic, this COVID-19, it was declared as a pandemic only in the last, not the last day, on the 30th of January, 2020. And at that time, there were, outside China, there were only 98 cases. Only 98 cases, not even 100. But these were all spread over, 18 countries. And today, we know what the numbers are. In Assam alone, we have almost we are nearing, 19,000. In India, we are almost nearing 10 lakhs. And in the world scenario, we are more than 13 lakhs. And we have more than almost, we are nearing, closing towards 6 lakhs of death. So it's a big pandemic, no doubt. But is it big enough? Or was there bigger pandemic prior to this? And how are we responding after all? Our responses to this pandemic situation, is it enough? Or, so to say, what was the response of the earlier societies? So these are actually very intriguing questions. And when we look at the history of pandemics, we really find it very interesting to know that in many ways, a lot of things are changing, but we are also remaining the same. It's like saying that the more we change, the more we remain the same. Anyway, this word actually pandemic, it comes from the Greek word. It starts with pan, which means all, and demos means people. So it is actually used to mean diseases that spread over different communities across countries and regions. And just like that, epidemics, it comes from the word epi, which means upon, upon people. So that is, these are the words which have been used, and it has got, a very long ancestry. And again, I'll go forward in telling you about this story of the different, not all, but some of these very important pandemics in history, considering the fact that this COVID pandemic is not the first, and nor will it be the last. So, and let me also tell you that this history discipline, because we are talking of historical perspective, we have to understand that history is not only about the past; it is also about the present. Because if we go by the definition of history, as per E.H. Carr, the famous historian, who said that it is an unending dialogue between the present and the past. In fact, very interestingly, let me tell you about a book, by Alfred W. Crosby. He wrote this book, America's Forgotten Pandemic, and he wrote this about the 1918 Spanish flu, which I will actually also explain a bit during the course of my presentation. So when he wrote the book in 1976, and like any author, he also desired that there should be some circulation. There should be some, people who will be interested in writing the book. But very sadly, when his book was published, it was considered to be without relevance. It was considered to be without relevance because in the advanced nations, the chief killers were no longer infections.
I guess there is some technical issue. Sir has been muted.
Okay. Am I audible now? Am I audible now?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
You
sir.
are audible, but others are disturbing actually. So all are requested to. All
Yeah,
are
that is the
requested
problem.
to.
Yeah, that is the problem with this Google Meet platform. Until and unless they mute themselves, it becomes difficult for us to mute. They have to mute themselves actually. Uh, anyway, I think.
Sir, you have to unmute yourself. Sir, you have to unmute yourself.
Okay.
Yes,
So,
it is okay
so
now. Yeah.
it's okay. Okay.
Yes.
Anyway, this is part of the because we are getting normalized to this. Anyway, so what happens is that uh, we react. The COVID-19 situation has actually made us react to with the situations in the past. This is what we have been doing all along after the COVID broke out. And I was telling you about the book named the uh, Americans Forgotten Pandemic by Alfred W. Crosby. Actually, he published the book in 1976, and the book was not doing good. Actually, he was not finding too many of the buyers. Of course, today, 2020, it is one of the big selling books now because of the pandemic situation. It has now again come into circulation. It has again become there is a demand for that. So anyway, why did in 1976 when it was published, why didn't it get so much of response? The reason was, as he himself told, was because perhaps, especially in the advanced nations, the chief killers like TB or influenza, these were no longer they were not no longer big infections. Uh, and that is the reason why perhaps he have said. And public health measures, penicillin, which was discovered in 1928, again, there are 2, 3 generations which have already come up. And this has, to a large extent, diminished the major, pathogens, the impact of the pathogens, which have, which, impact the population during pandemics. So this is the situation, and also just to tell you one thing, how human, our human frailty, the way we sometimes think that we have, things are over, we have overcome it, and then we again have the mastery of the feeling of mastery, the feeling of superiority over, the world of microbes or the world of animals or the entire planet actually. In 1969, in the same book he has written, that the Surgeon General of United States, William H. Stewart, he assured the people that there will be no infectious disease, and it has been left. That is a matter of the past. Of course, 3 years later, again, it was again reiterated in the final edition of the classic book, Natural History of Infectious Disease, whose author was a Nobel laureate, Macfarlane Burnet. He concluded that the most likely forecast about the future of infectious disease is that it will be very dull. That means there will be infectious disease, but that will be very dull. That is what that was said. So anyway, but we know what has happened. After 1969, there were a lot of new infections that did take place. Uh, so emergence of pandemic in history actually started after the hunter-gatherer phase. It was historically unknown during the hunter-gatherer phase because the material evidence which are there, it does not suggest or it does not, come up with any large scale death of this proportion. So to say, pandemics uh, have actually become a part of human civilization only after the agricultural revolution. Though at least as Homo sapiens, uh, as a history has been written by wonderfully by Yuval Noah Harari in the book Sapiens, he has written a history of 70,000 years. And this 70,000 years of history, of this, 10,000 years of history, you know, I mean to say 60,000 years of history did not have any pandemic, so to say. After the agricultural revolution, which started around 10,000 years ago, after which, you know, people began to settle down, they began to, you know, start domesticating cattle in larger numbers, having a settled life, producing a surplus, having more population. Uh, this is a situation when slowly pandemic started. And uh, so to say, after the cities came into being, after trade started, after a sort of globalization happened in the sense that pathogens of one part of the world travel to another part of the world along with the goods, along with the carriages, you know, the pandemics became a reality and very, very serious in course of time. Domestication of animals and closer proximity to the animal world, actually, it made the animal viruses jump into the human chain. That is the main cause. That is the main actually root. And this has caused the huge infections that we are having. So most of the pandemics that we see, they are actually, you know, zoonotic diseases caused by germs that spread between animals and people. Throughout history, therefore, we find smallpox, influenza, malaria, tuberculosis, leprosy, plague, cholera, yellow fever, syphilis, AIDS, Ebola, SARS, MERS, you know, all these. And the last one, you can say, the COVID-19. So this has become possible actually because of what human beings have also done to the planet, to the other species, to the other plants and animals. It is actually, you can say, both a reaction, a cause and reaction of the situation, of the civilizational journey that we have made. The factors that actually increases the likelihood of the spread of any pathogens is, I think, number one, we must say that population. Population has increased. Population has increased exponentially. And just to give you one understanding, it took 2 lakh years, 2 lakh বছর লাগিল, of human history for the population to reach 1 billion. To become 1 billion, we required 2 lakh years. But we required only 200 years more to now reach a population of more than 7 billion. So you can see what has happened. You can see what has happened. And now we are talking that by 2050, we will come to 9.8 billion, almost 10 billion. These are all approximate figures. And of them, more number of people, they are living in urban areas. For example, of the 7.8 billion people we have approximately in 2020, this is a population which is given by there is a population meter. I have taken it from that. So of that, you know, 4.2 billion, they live in cities. So we must remember one thing. This is one you can say important characteristic of every pandemic that has taken place. It all becomes acute and it normally starts from these urban centers. So more and more urbanization means there is more and more chance of epidemic. Even today, you just imagine what is happening in India, for example, which are the hotspots. Mumbai is a hotspot, Delhi is a hotspot, Guwahati is a hotspot in Assam. These are what? These are nothing but urban centers. These are, so to say, you know, uh, uh, this highlights our civilization, the progress that we have made. These are, you can say, in a way, the toast of human civilization, the toast of the development that we have done. But remember that, you know, these are the places where the pandemics have started. Not only this corona, it has started all throughout history. You will find that they have all occurred normally in cities. And with this, let me take you to the first pandemic, recorded pandemic in history, which again occurred in one city, that is the city of Athens. So this plague in Athens, the cause is normally going by the symptoms. It's considered that it might have been smallpox or typhus. We don't really know actually what happened. But then we know that there was a plague. Plague is a word which we use also to mean pandemic for, sometimes it is used, quite synonymously. In 430 BCE, that is before the current era, before Christ was born, in Athens, this happened. The Peloponnesian War was going on, the Second Peloponnesian War, and because of the war, many people came into Athens, and fortunately we have a historian, Thucydides, who recorded that this is perhaps, he did not remember anything that has happened like that before. And he wrote all the symptoms which were there, on the basis of which today we say that it might have been smallpox or typhus. Anyway, the casualty was around 75,000 to 1 lakh. But in terms of proportion, it was 25 to 30% of the population that died. There were, at one point of time, they were actually burning these bodies everywhere in Athens. And this led to the downfall of Athens, actually. Athens lost, it led to downfall. So, and I won't go into too much of details about all of these, different pandemics. Otherwise, it will take a lot of time. But let me also tell you that as this was the first recorded, uh, you know, plague in history, pandemic in history, Thucydides, who we consider to be one of the best historians, he has actually elaborately uh, recorded what went on there. And from there, we understand that a lot of things which happen even today happened then. So as human beings, some of the archetypes, some of the type of people that you see today during the pandemic situation now, you will find it there at that point of time, and some of the consequences, so to say, like the impact it had on the Athenian society, on agriculture. So this all took place, and there was a power shift as well. I don't know whether that will happen, but there were refugees, there were forgeries which are going on. So this is one of the historically known pandemic in history. The next pandemic took place after that first Athens pandemic, after around 3 centuries. It took around 300 years for the next thing to come, which is known again as the Antonine Plague. So Antonine Plague, it started in Italy, in Rome, so to say, and it actually went on for a long period, 165 to 750 CE. This is the recorded, because, and again, it was like, smallpox symptoms were there. And just to tell you that this led to the downfall of the Roman Empire. So empires also were, in a way, affected in a big way by this. And of course, like in the other plague also, this time also it happened. And the people thought that the gods are angry, and they also started to target the emerging group of Christians, because Christianity has just emerged, and I'm talking of 165 CE, current era. That means after the birth of Christ. So this is a period, and this continued till 750 CE. So this is just a beginning part of Christianity, and so uh, it was just beginning. And so there were people who actually targeted that, gods are angry because this new religion is coming up, and they were targeted in a way. And there was a lot of domino effect. And people suffered. People suffered. Finally, it is the people that suffer. So Antonine Plague is one plague which again, uh, it affected that way. The other plague, uh, after that, the first confirmed case of bubonic plague. Now, bubonic plague, it is caused by it is a bacteria that causes it, Yersinia pestis. Yersinia pestis, it's a bacteria which actually is carried. The vector is, from the rats to the fleas and then to the buddies. So what has happened is, as people traded during the, in the trade routes, when they carried food grain as well, in the stowaways of the ships, and also in the other goods that they carried, this was carried. This bacteria was carried. This is not a virus. This is a bacteria. And again, this Justinian plague, as it is called, by it goes by the name of Emperor Justinian. He is a person who also got. It is said that he got infected, and luckily we have a historian at that point of time, Procopius, who actually recorded what happened during that point of time. And the estimated death toll was around, 3 to 4 crores, 30 million to 50 million. This is the estimate. 1/4 of the European population died. 1/4 of the European population died. It actually came from Egypt, traveled with the merchant ships to, Central Asia, arrived at Constantinople, which is the capital of the Byzantine Empire. Just to tell you very briefly, those of you who are not from history, so this is called the Eastern Roman Empire. The Western one was actually, it was also, in a way, it was dealt with a blow by the earlier pandemic, and this pandemic, it led to, again, this uh, downfall of the Byzantine Empire, and it also helped in the growth of the Ottoman Empire. So it's a huge loss of population, and the consequence, as I have told you, it is there. And in the philosophical world, there were sophists. Because there was disbelief in God, because it is seen that God is punishing everyone, even the good people are getting infected by this bubonic plague, and therefore uh, there was a disbelief in God. And bubonic plague means actually it actually affects finally the buboes. That is the um, so to say, lymph, the lymphs which are there, the lymph nodes. We have different lymph nodes. It affects there, so it bulges out. So it is known as bubonic. Of course, there are two other types of the same, according to the symptom. You have, just like the bubonic plague, you have also the pneumonic plague. When it affects the lungs, especially when the oxygen supply goes down, then people die, and then that is called the pneumonic plague. And you also have a plague which affects, we call it septicemic plague. When multi-organ, there is a septicemia that affects the blood. It goes from there actually. These are the progression in which finally people die. And if somebody dies of the bubons, then it is called bubonic plague. If somebody dies because of septicemia, it is called septicemic plague. If somebody dies because of pneumonia, it becomes known as pneumonic plague. So anyway, so this is the beginning, you can say, of a long history of plague in the world. This Yersinia pestis is something, the rats and the population, because we must understand one thing, that the population of rats, it increased in this planet after the agricultural revolution. Before the agricultural revolution, that there were not too many rats. And today, our population, it can be, of course, a quiz question. Whose number is more? The number of rats or the number of humans? Fortunately, we outnumber them. We outnumber them by around 6 to 1. I mean to say, for every rat, we are at least six human being. Anyway, another pestilence, another big source of pandemic was smallpox. I already said that the Antonine and the Athens pandemics, they were perhaps, going by the symptoms, they were perhaps caused by this smallpox. And smallpox is caused by a virus, unlike plague. Unlike bubonic plague, it is caused by a virus, variola virus. Of course, it also has its different strains. And one of the very important, it also looks like a epidemic in the sense that it happened only in Japan, but it can also be considered to be a pandemic considering the number of people that died. You know, one third of Japan's population died because of that. One third of Japan got wiped out because of smallpox in 735 to 737 CE. After that, continuing with the smallpox, let me tell you the other story. The story of the pox being carried to the Americas. It is said that starting from Columbus, starting from Columbus to the colonizers, Spanish colonizers, to the conquistadors, there were the pathogens were carried actually. Pathogens were carried by them. People of the Americas, they were not, they did not have the resistance to this virus. And variola virus, there was an outbreak because
This thing.
uh,
Yes, it's right. Yeah.
okay, there is some there was some actually disturbance. Anyway, uh, so uh, as I told you already, the Athens had happened. After that, Antonine had happened, and so this was, you know, variola virus was, it was a known virus to Asia, Arabia, and to Europe. But the Americas, they did not know that. They did not know that they were not actually exposed to this. So when these Europeans went to the Americas, they carried along with them these pathogens, and it wiped out entire communities. From in the 16th century, in the early part of the 16th century, that is precisely from 1519 to 1520, variola virus, it wiped out 5 to 8 million people in the Americas. It wiped out entire communities. The Aztec Empire fell. 90% of the people died. 90% of the people died. And it is said that there was no need for the, you know, Europeans to fight the battle. Already the virus has won them, this empire. And this has been very, very succinctly stated by, again, this historian, Alfred W. Crosby, who has written two very wonderful books, The Columbian Exchange and Ecological Imperialism, where he says that these European pathogens, it helped them win the empires. So anyway, this smallpox, of course, later on, this uh, we were able to fight the human society, human, you can say, community have been able to fight against it, and one of the earliest vaccine was developed against smallpox by Edward Jenner in 1796, and WHO declared it that in 1980 that the smallpox have been eradicated. We don't have any smallpox now. Now let's carry on with the Black Death. I'll tell again very briefly. The next big pandemic occurred in the 14th century. This is before the, you know, smallpox that I told you earlier. I'm just jumping back a bit. From 1347 to 1351, during these years, the Black Death, again, the great bubonic plague, as it's said, occurred in Europe. It is about 800 years after the Justinian, our last important plague. There was war, there was famine, because there was some amount of climate change which was also occurring at that point of time. And Europe was having the effect of that. And There were many writers at that point of time because it is 1347, and they used to, put it down like they used to express that perhaps this is the end of the world. So big was this pandemic. And the writer, John Kelly, who has written about this in a book which came out only in this century, 21st century, The Great Mortality, An Intimate History of the Black Death, he tries to say that war played a vital role in the spread of the pandemic. So war was there, famine was there, because of famine, people moved from one part to another. Even the rodents, they move from one part to another along with that. So these are the reasons it is said. It is said that it traveled with the merchant ships from China to Europe and then Africa. And it is also important to note that, for the first time, perhaps, it's not for the first time, yeah, for the first time, you can say, the Mongols used their own soldiers who were affected by this bubonic plague as virtual, biological uh, biological missiles, they were used as biological weapons. The dead bodies were actually flung, catapulted into the enemy lines, and those people got infected. The Mongols, no doubt, they lost, but also uh, the victors, they also later on they had it with the Black Death. The estimated population. Let me not tell you about the population because these vary around from 20 to 25 million. But then one third of Europe was wiped off by this pandemic. And the consequence, they were very important consequences were there. Feudalism, যেটো আমি সামন্তবাদ বুলি কওঁ, feudalism actually, in a way, it diminished, it met its downfall and final extinction, and slowly capitalism came up. Uh, and we know, I told you about the smallpox happenings in the 16th century in the Americas. That happened after this, because after this, this colonization will start. Colonization will start. The peasants, they were in great demand because one third of the population was wiped out. The peasants came in demand. They started to have more rights, right over land. So it was very important. The consequence was very important. And for the first time in history, quarantine was followed. Quarantine as a procedure of fighting against the pandemic was started. Physical distancing or social distancing, whatever way we say, I prefer the word physical distancing. That also started. So whatever we are doing today in the time of Corona, social distancing or physical distancing or quarantine, it goes back to this Black Death in 1347 to 1351. So, but we have to remember one thing, that still people were not knowing what is causing the death. People still thought that they did not know that it is because of the fleas which which feast on the rats, that they get it from there, and then when they bite the human beings, that it goes into the human chain. So people did not know that. So there were a lot of superstitions. And again, minority targeting occurred during this Black Death. And this time, they were the Jews. Jews were killed in huge number because it was thought that they were the carriers of this disease. So anyway, and there were also a lot of self-flagellation. People who used to beat themselves. In Christianity, that type of sex emerged. So a lot of things happened, and there were a lot of superstitions which come into force because of this. And overall, there was an idea, a very an idea which was later on it took root and it got entrenched for a very long period of time. It is that that it is actually this bubonic plague or Black Death. It is caused by a particular miasma, some smell that comes out from rotten things. So it is that which creates it. And this we will find uh, being taken as one of the principal causes in the next great pandemic, which happened in London. We call it the Great Plague of London, where around 1 lakh Londoners died in 1665. We have to remember one thing, that this is a period when already the East India Company was formed, when the Europeans were coming to India for trade. It is quite into the modern age, so to say. But uh, and this is also one of the pandemics where you have lot of written sources, because search kept the record, the government kept the record, and a lot of the things which are happening today, like the treating the pandemic as a sort of law and order issue, we see quite distinctly during this plague in London. It is almost the same way that there was lockdown, there was quarantine, there was people were not allowed to come out. These things were there in large number, in different ways, of course. The way it was done there, of course, were different. Uh, I will skip the time, otherwise that's why I'm not going into the details of it, though they are very, very interesting, in fact. They're very, very interesting, of course. But let me tell you that uh, just like the hotels, the all the public places, the restaurants, the cinema halls, the all these places where public do come in, they are now closed. Similarly, in London, the same thing happened. The taverns, the pubs, they were closed. And very interestingly, one thing happened, because they all thought that it is because of the rotting thing, which is the smell that comes out from the rotten art, and which is carried by dogs and cats. So it was thought that the dogs and the cats, they were responsible for spread of this disease. And so what the mayor of London did, he passed one proclamation that all the dogs and cats must be killed. And so we find that huge scale massacre of dogs and cats. 40,000 dogs and 80,000 cats are estimated to have been killed during during the London plague. And because and there are records, as I have told you, because the state used to give them money. Whoever kills, they were given money. And in one single transaction, there is a record of 5,000 killings of dog. Anyway, so you can easily understand, if you kill dogs, if you kill cats, who will prosper? It is the rats. It is the rats who had a field day. And it is the rats from which people did not know that they are having the plague. And it is because of the rats that 1 lakh of these Londoners died in the process. There was a class divide that could be seen. The rich, they left London. They went to their countryside. The poor, many of them were not allowed to go, and many actually perished in London itself. So these things are also quite evident, because any pandemic is also considered to be a disaster. And today in India, for example, we are treating COVID-19 with the help of the Disaster Management Act. So disasters, maybe the cause may be natural, but the response that we give, that is, the response is always cultural. We respond with the amount of knowledge that we have. So the London plague, it brought out the similar side of human life, and the poor were targeted. And one editor of a London weekly, he actually concluded, he wrote a editorial piece where he said that not a single person of the elite, died. That is his conclusion, but we don't know what actually happened. There might have been casualty, I don't know. This plague, it actually went on. It went on, and then it infected in the 18th century also. In 1738 to 1740, for 2 years, we have a record of a plague in Eastern Europe where around 50,000 people died. Then again in 1855, there is a plague which infected India as well, China and India mainly. Then from, of course, from Yunnan, it came to Hong Kong, and from Hong Kong, it came to Calcutta to India, and then it traveled west to Africa. Overall, 1.2 million, not 1.2 crore, 12 million people died during this 1855 plague. Then another plague also occurred in 1894 in rural China. From there, it went to Australia. So that is another plague that happened, another pandemic that happened. That is another important pandemic that happened. But slowly, this the plague died down in a way. By late 19th century, precisely in 1894, the cause of the plague, that it is caused by the virus, by the bacteria Yersinia pestis, it came to be known, because medical science was also, health sciences, they are making progress, virology is making progress, so bacteriology is making progress, so this came to light. And but let me remind you one thing, you must have also come across the news which is there all around, because very recently, uh, even today, I think there is a news which have come up in USA, that one I think one squirrel died because of plague. That is, this bacteria is still there. It is still there, and this again actually shows, because of us, you cannot blame anybody, because human beings, there is uh, the decimation we have done on the animal world. We have killed animal to an extent, unbelievable. We have completely wiped up the megafauna in Australia, megafauna in Americas. Human beings have done that. And today, every day it is estimated that we kill around uh, 20 crore animals every day just for our appetite to feed us. There is this this recent, plague is being caused not by rats, not by rats. It's being caused by an animal called the marmot. It is a big furry squirrel, and it used to be traded. The fur of that animal was very, very costly, and it had its market. Therefore, it was traded. And we have in 1911 one case of plague again, where around 63% died. 63,000 people died. 63,000 people died. And just 1 week back, uh, we are having new cases of plague, bubonic plague. In the inner Mongolia on Sunday, on 5th of July 2020, a person died. A herdsman died, and there were 2 children who actually died prior to that. So remember that bubonic plague, or the bacteria that causes it, it's not yet over. And in fact, the World Health Organization, it has categorized the plague as a re-emerging disease. So it is not over. It is not over. In the meantime, other things were there, like cholera. So it is, I have mentioned that some of these pathogens were carried by the colonizers to the colonies. Similarly, some of the pathogens of colonies also went back to the colonizers' world. One of them was cholera. And the first important, most biggest cholera pandemic, it occurred in 1817 to 1824 in India. It is said that it started from the Kumbh Mela. It went on to infect people in Calcutta. And then from there, it went to Southeast Asia, then from China, then it went to Persian Gulf, and then to Europe. Importantly, there was a doctor called Dr. John Snow, who found out that this cholera is being caused by water and water contamination. And he actually did some experiment with that, based on his observation. and he is considered to be the father of epidemiology. So this is a new thing which came up, which have developed. Today, in the pandemic situation today under COVID-19, we are giving very much, quite a lot of importance to the epidemiologist. So anyway, just like cholera, there is another thing which infected, this time the Americans mostly. It is the yellow fever. It went from Africa to the Western Hemisphere. It is said that it traveled with the slave trade. Then slowly we find that the flu, it became more rampant. We have in 1889 to 1890 a Russian flu which killed around 1 million people worldwide. Then we have the next biggest flu pandemic, so to say, which we all are talking today, and that is the Spanish flu. Spanish flu in America, I just used these statistics just to show how big the impact was. In USA, Spanish flu, it is estimated to have killed 6,75,000 people. 6,75,000 people. And USA's casualty figures in World War I, World War II, Korean War, Vietnam War, Iraq War, and Afghanistan War, it comes to around 6,36,000. So Spanish flu killed more Americans than these wars that took place. There are a lot of works which have come up on the Spanish flu, and it is actually not a Spanish flu. It is a flu which infected USA to a large extent and other parts of Europe, but Spain was the country which was not fighting the First World War. So it was a neutral country. And so the reporters, the newspapers in Spain, they were mainly reporting about this pandemic. And therefore, because the newspapers were reporting and it is being found in the media in Spain, and also the monarch got infected also. So these were news. And so it came to be known popularly as Spanish flu. But in fact, the origins were not Spanish. After that, after 1918, we had the Asian flu in 1957. We have the Hong Kong flu in 1968, 69. Another thing which came up is also the HIV. It was found out in 1980s, early part of 1980 till date. It has killed around 3.2 million people, 32 million people, quite a lot. And 75 million people have been infected by HIV. But today we have built up the health infrastructure to an extent that we are being able to contain that. Then we have SARS, we have MERS, we have swine flu, we have Ebola, and today we are having the, so to say, pandemic, COVID-19. So this history of pandemic, therefore, so to say, is a continuous history. Not a millennium, we have not have a single millennium without a pandemic. Since it started, there is always one or two, if not more. And we don't know whether we have been able to record in totality what has happened. So humans and this world of microbes, this war is there, this conflict is there, and this will continue. And because of our ignorance for a very long time, and also because of lack of science, the science education or scientific thinking, we used to think that these pandemics were caused by, these are all acts of God. The response was like that for a very long period of time. There was superstition, astrology, these were there. And the common features are that it has mostly started, as I've told before, in the cities. Then it went to the villages. The poor people, they always suffered the most. There was always some amount of minority or othering in the process, and people have been in the past persecuted because of that. And but the situation has also helped in development of health sciences, in sanitation, in the development of antibiotics and better diagnostics facilities, for which today we are perhaps in a better position to fight against COVID-19. But the most important hallmark of any pandemic is uncertainty. And uncertainty is still there. We are very uncertain actually. All the things which are being done in the COVID-19 situation appears to be done, in a tentative manner. We don't know really. And this pandemics has also helped in in our whole human thought process. There are a lot of writings about that, literature and philosophy. uh, you know, it has been influenced by pandemics. The absurd, the idea of the absurd by Albert Camus. Camus wrote the book The Plague in 1947. He took plague as a rallying point where he tried uh, to exhibit that life is so absurd. Then we have this very famous novel, The Love in the Time of Cholera, by the Colombian Nobel Prize winning author, Gabriel Garcia Marquez. He tried to portray love as an emotional and physical plague. These type of things are there. And there are also works on the so to say dystopia. Unlike utopia, where people try to think of a world which is very ideal, but which is not possible. There are dystopian novels, and many of these dystopian novels tell about authoritarianism, surveillance, oppression, and these dystopian realities in the novel, in the fiction. This fiction, dystopian fictions, many of the features of the dystopian fiction are becoming real in today's world. But superstition is still there. I'm just coming to conclude by saying that uh, this pandemic, like other pandemics, has got a lot of collateral damages there. There will be a lot of domino effect. In India, we have seen what has happened. We have seen what has happened to the migrant workers. People have traveled long distances working on foot, by bicycling. We know about that courageous girl who carried her father, Jyoti Kumari, from Gurugram to Bihar, 1,200 kilometers of cycling. So these things have happened. The poor suffer. There is a class divide which comes up. As I said, that there is always a cultural response. And this cultural response is not always human. It is not always human. And historical knowledge, it actually makes us understand that these things, this human, the similar side of us, the negative side of us, they are there, but how we overcome that, that is important. That is important. And and talking of collaterals, I just like to end by giving a very alarming picture. The report by Oxfam, which says that by the end of this year, there will be around 12,000 deaths per day because of hunger. Already it is said that in India, the death because of hunger after start of this pandemic, it has crossed the number of deaths that we have because of COVID. We have lost more people already because of hunger than because of COVID. So therefore, we need to all get together, but we have to be optimistic. As the principal in the very beginning, in the very inaugural speech, he has said that this is not the first, and this will not be the last. But we have to remember that we respond according to uh, the response that we have, the alternatives that we have. I finish off with a quotation from Milton Friedman, the Nobel laureate who got his Nobel Prize in 1976 for economics. He is a high priest of capitalism. He is a high priest of capitalism. But I like this quotation. He said, "Only a crisis, actual or perceived, produces real change. Only a crisis, actual or perceived, produces real change. When that crisis occurs, the actions that are taken depend on the ideas that are lying around. So the ideas that are lying around are very important. That, I believe, is our basic function, to develop alternatives to existing policies, to keep them alive and available until the politically impossible becomes the politically inevitable. And he also joins with the words, governments never learn, only people learn. So let us hope that the people, but I also want that the government also gets involved together, work in this COVID situation, and we all are able to pave the way for positive development of a sustainable future for mankind. With these words, I am sorry I skipped the time by a few minutes. I thank the organizers, the BN College, the entire family, BN College family, headed by the very able and energetic principal, Dr. Chakraborty. I thank you all once again for giving me this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. This has been very insightful. Thank you for enlightening us with the fact that how pandemics have taken place in the past also. Like you have mentioned so many times, COVID-19 is not the first pandemic and won't be the last as well. And the various kind of reasons that might be associated with the pandemics that have taken place. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
If we have any questions or queries, we will take them up later on after both the lectures are over.
Yeah,
Not
yeah.
now, after both the lectures are over,
Yeah.
we'll take the queries, sir. Yes, sir. So for the second half, Madam Sanghamitra Chaudhary will be speaking on the topic. And for that, I would like to request Ibrahim Ali Mondal, sir, Assistant Professor of the Department of History, BN College, Dhubri, to kindly give a brief introduction of our honorable resource person, Dr. Sanghamitra Chaudhary, ma'am. Over to you, Ibrahim, sir.
Hello.
You are audible, sir.
Hello.
Hello.
Good.
Yes, sir.
Rajita, I'm ready. Okay.
Yeah.
Good,
Yes, sir.
good afternoon to you all. Respected Principal Sir, Dr. Dhruva Chakraborty, BN College, Dhubri, Assam. Respected resource person of today's webinar, Understanding Pandemic Historical Perspective, Professor Rajiv Hendik, sir, HOD, Department of History, Guwahati University, Dr. Sanghamitra Chaudhary, Assistant Professor, Department of Peace, Public Studies and Management, Sikkim Central University's Gangtok, and all the respected participants. Dear participants, we are lucky enough as one renewed social scientist, Dr. Sanghamitra Chaudhary, being with us. It is my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Sanghamitra Chaudhary, is one resource person of today's webinar, Understanding Pandemic, a Historical Perspective. Dr. Sanghamitra Chaudhary has been working in Sikkim Central University as an assistant professor in the Department of Peace and Conflict Studies and Management since 2012. Dr. Sanghamitra Chaudhary has completed her PhD from Center for the Study of Law and Governance, JNU. She is the recipient of 3 prestigious fellowships, such as Charles Wallace Fellowship from Queen University, UK, UN International Law Fellowship from Hague Academy of International Law, the Netherlands. In 2016, Dr. Sanghamitra Chaudhary has completed her postdoctoral studies from University of Oxford. He has published many research papers and has 2 books to her credit. One book, Women and Conflict in India, published in 2016, and another book, Human Rights in the Indian Armed Force, and analysis of Article 33. Her area of interest are gender and peace, human rights, folklore of Northeast India, music, and identify, etc. Today, she is going to speak on understanding pandemic through a gender lens. Please, over to Sanghamitra ma'am. Roja.
Hello.
Thank you so much, Ibrahim sir. Without much ado, I would like to request Sanghamitra ma'am to take the floor. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you for your kind words, sir. Rosa, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, you are audible.
Am I audible, please?
You are audible, ma'am.
Okay. Thank you so much, evening, respected principals. Yes, organizers of this webinar, respect Hindi.
No, your video is off, I think.
Ma'am, your voice is breaking. I think there's some network issue, sir.
Okay, let us see.
Mr. Amin Sheikh, please
Yes.
mute yourself. Mr.
Hello,
Amin
it was
Sheikh.
disconnected.
Okay, it is okay now, ma'am.
Hello.
Ma'am, you're audible now.
Yes. Could I repeat? Actually, I don't know whether you have heard.
Technical hands, please. If anybody is disturbing and not listening to our request, then remove him. Technical hands. If anybody is disturbing,
Okay,
disturbance
sir.
is coming from any.
Okay,
Please
sir.
remove
Okay,
him.
sir. I will, sir.
Excuse me, আপোনালোকে কল কৰিছে নেকি বাৰু? You can call her. I mean to say, if she without the video, even if she, I think, uses the audio, that will do.
Yes, yes.
In case
Roja,
of weak connectivity, that can be done actually. Because
Roja,
I am waiting for her
Yes.
speech like all of you. Yes.
Roja, তুমি মেডামক ফোন কৰি কথাটো কৈ
Audio
দিয়া।
through the phone number.
হয়, হয়, sir.
ৰোজা হেল্ল' ৰোজা
হয় sir, হয় sir.
তুমি ৰবীন ছাৰক কোৱা মেডামক ফোন কৰিবলৈ কোৱা
ছাৰে কৰি আছে নেকি?
আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে
হয় sir.
Hello. Hello.
Yes ma'am, you are audible.
Sorry, my apologies because of very poor net connection in the Himalayas.
No
Thank
problem
you,
ma'am,
and
it's all right ma'am.
thank you, and good evening, respected principal sir, and the organizers of this webinar, respected speaker, and all the participants and dear students. Our previous speaker, Henrik sir, has already given us a historical trajectory of the pandemic. Therefore, I'm going to take a gendered aspect of this pandemic, though this pandemic affects everyone equally. So I'm trying to present to you a slide. Present now. Can you see the slide? Hello?
Not yet ma'am.
Not yet. Okay. Please let me know whenever you see the slide.
Okay, okay ma'am.
Can you see the slide now? Not yet?
No ma'am, not yet, not yet ma'am.
Not yet. I'm trying to, no, but then she can't see my slide. Okay.
Yes ma'am, we can see it now. It's visible ma'am.
Presentation after exception. As long as
It's visible ma'am.
Madam, muted হয়ে আছে। Madam, muted হয়ে আছে। চয়নিতা ম্যাম আপনি muted হয়ে আছে।
Oh ma'am. Ma'am, you have to unmute the button.
Madam, please unmute yourself.
রবিন রবিন
Is it all right now?
মেডামক আনমিউট কৰিব কও
Unmute কৰিছো দেখোন।
মেডামক আনমিউট কৰিব কও
Samhita ma'am, please unmute yourself.
Ma'am, your presentation is now visible, but unmute yourself, ma'am.
Unmute. Hello.
Yes ma'am.
Can you hear me now?
Yes ma'am, we can hear you ma'am.
And you can also see the slide.
Ma'am, the slide is gone now. It was there before, but it has gone now. We can see the video conference.
Now, ma'am, you are sharing your entire screen, ma'am. So minimize your screen and share your slide, ma'am.
Wait.
Now, ma'am, it is
It's visible
now, ma'am,
ma'am.
it is visible, ma'am. It is visible, ma'am, now.
It is okay now. It is okay now.
It is okay?
Yes, yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So the outlines of this presentation will be as follows: conceptual clarity, epidemic, pandemic, and endemic diseases. Hendik sir has already summarized beautifully. He has given us a beautiful trajectory of the entire issue. So I'll not go into the details. Then we'll straight away we'll discuss the genesis of this present problem and impact of COVID-19 on women. We'll also try to touch upon whether female leaders are more successful at managing this crisis, followed by future course of action. So epidemic to pandemic. Epidemic describes a disease affecting an exceptionally high proportion of population in a localized area and over a limited period of time. Pandemic is a cross-national or worldwide outbreak of a disease. In contrast to an epidemic, a pandemic is not limited in time or place. Pandemics have been observed throughout history. Hendik sir has already elaborated everything. In the 20th century, 3 major pandemic outbreaks were observed: Spanish flu, Asian flu, Hong Kong flu. They are actually major pandemics. There are many others which sir has already elaborated. An endemic disease is the one that is always present in the population. For example, chickenpox or malaria, and so on and so forth. Endemic diseases are relatively rare and not as widespread as an epidemic. It is always prevalent in the population that lives in that area. These areas contain viruses, bacteria, or parasites which can transmit the diseases to humans. There are 2 types of endemic diseases. Holoendemic diseases. This kind of endemic disease affects mostly children. This infection is highly prevalent in the early years of life. The adult population do not show traces of diseases as much as children do. Malaria is a type of endemic disease. Hyper-endemic diseases. This type of endemic diseases are constantly present at a high rate and are found among all age groups equally. Am I audible?
Yes,
Yes, ma'am, you are.
So, genesis of the present problem. The present catastrophe has taken place due to the outbreak of coronavirus or COVID-19. The coronavirus originated from Wuhan city of China's Hubei province in December 2019. The WHO on January 30th, 2020 confirmed this novel virus as public health emergency of international concern and eventually as pandemic on March 11th this year. The structure of this virus membrane looks similar like the sun's corona. Therefore, taking that similarity into account, the name coronavirus has been named or given. It is basically attacks the respiratory tract and shows various symptoms ranging from common cold to severe life-threatening occurrences and even death. The virus is very contagious and hence it is spreading in a rapid pace all over the world. We have witnessed one of the worst pandemic in the present era, which has ruined the entire world and compelled us to raise questions on our own survival. Now, impact of COVID-19. Though I already said that pandemic affects everyone equally, but my focus will be on women amidst COVID. Compounded economic impacts are felt especially by women and girls who are generally earning less, saving less, and holding insecure jobs or living close to poverty. While early reports reveal more men are dying as a result of COVID-19, the health of women generally is adversely impacted through the reallocation of resources and priorities, including reproductive health services. Unpaid care work has increased with heightened care needs of older persons and overwhelmed health services. As COVID-19 pandemic deepens, economic and social stress coupled with restricted movement and social isolation measures, gender-based violence is increasing exponentially. Many women are being forced to lock down at home with their abusers. At the same time that services to support survivors are being disrupted or made inaccessible. school closures have put additional strain and demand on women and girls. School closures do not just mean that girls are taking on more course at home. It could also lead to millions more girls dropping out of school before they complete their education, especially girls living in poverty, girls with disabilities, or living in rural isolated location. All of these impacts are further amplified in context of fragility, conflict, and emergencies where social cohesion is already undermined and institutional capacity and services are limited. Anxiety, depression, risk of infection, sense of helplessness, bruised interpersonal relations are some other unexpected stressors for women due to this pandemic. In fact, the year 2020, marking the 25th anniversary of Beijing Platform for Action, was intended to be groundbreaking for gender equality. Instead, with the spread of this COVID-19 pandemic, even the limited gains made in the past decades are at risk of being rolled back. That means whatever we have achieved, we are actually losing them. The pandemic is deepening the pre-existing inequalities, exposing vulnerabilities in social, political, economic systems, which are in turn amplifying the impacts of the pandemic. As the COVID-19 pandemic continues to have widespread impacts on workforces globally, migrant workers are among those bearing the brunt of the crisis. Women migrant workers around the world are on the front lines of COVID-19 pandemic. They work in essential but low-paid and vulnerable jobs as health and care workers, nurses, cleaners, and laundry workers, placing them at high risk of exposure to coronavirus. Women migrant workers already have to grapple with multiple and intersecting forms of discrimination and inequalities, gender-specific restrictions in migration policies, insecure forms of labor, racism, and xenophobia. Merging evidence on impact of COVID-19 suggests that women's economic and productive lives will be affected disproportionately and differently from men. Across the globe, women earn less, save less, hold less secure jobs, are more likely to be employed in the informal sector. They have less access to social protections and are the majority of single-parent households. Their capacity to absorb economic shocks is therefore less than that of men. This picture, many of us we have seen the painful picture how they are struggling. In fact, everyone is struggling, but my focus is on women. Even you can see how the children, they are carrying the children and they're trying to go back to their origin, to their homes in this lockdown situation. This is a picture from India, our own country. So now, a few innovative virtual solutions for atrocities against women during pandemic. Many countries have taken up some virtual solutions. Say, for example, hashtag anti-domestic violence in China. Hashtag anti-domestic violence in China during epidemic has taken off as a part of advocacy with link to online resources helping to break the silence of women during lockdown. Then special helpline services are launched in Argentina, in Antigua and Barbuda. There are countries in the Caribbean. Then instant message services in Spain. It was launched with geolocation function. Then comes shelter is provided to distressed women in France. In France, shelter services have been made available for women who are victims of such abusive situations. I think I have missed out one point here. No, it's there. Space for reporting atrocities in pharmacies within Argentina. Pharmacies were declared safe places in Argentina for the victims for reporting their issues, their problems. In Colombia, the government has guaranteed continued access to virtual gender-based violence services, including legal advice, psychological advice, police and justice services, including hearings. United Nations Human Rights Office report says that in Uttar Pradesh, India, police have reportedly launched a new domestic violence hotline and ensured that a female legal officer or female officer would handle this case. Now, the next question. Are female leaders more successful at managing the coronavirus crisis? Amidst coronavirus pandemic, a clear trend has emerged. Nations led by women have been more successful at containing, and in the case of New Zealand, we all know, we have all read, even apparently eradicating outbreaks of the virus. From Germany's Angela Merkel and New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern to Finland's Sanna Marin, Norway's Solberg, female leaders have reportedly fought COVID-19 outbreaks more efficiently than many others, registering lower cases and lower death rates. The actions of female leaders in Denmark, Finland, Germany, Iceland, New Zealand, Norway, Taiwan are cited as supporting evidence that women are managing the crisis better than their male counterparts. Now, an analysis, the success of these women represents the victory of a style of leadership which is completely different from the ideal of the political strongman, a different approach that proved to be beneficial in handling the coronavirus emergency. What differentiates them, firstly, is empathy, putting health and human security at the very heart of their response. They have been driven by values. It hasn't been, we have got to save the economy. They have been wise enough to know you can't save an economy if you don't have people, or if your people are ground down by pandemic. Female-led governments shared similar approaches to the crisis, characterized by early consultation with national health experts and advisors, and containment measures were implemented early. On the other hand, the most male-led governments downplayed initial warnings and acted with substantial delays to respond to the crisis. Prime Minister Solberg of Norway even held the children's consultation, acknowledging that children get worried and concerned in events like these. In fact, I must reiterate that in the Scandinavian countries, they have the concept of future generation rights. They not only think about the present generation, they have sets of rights which is preserved for future generations. Protective femininity draws on forms of protectiveness, often incorporating caring and empathy, and associated with women's role in the family, in order to suggest that a women politician has feminine traits that will facilitate safeguarding citizens. Coronavirus has impacted on political leaders' attempts to evoke forms of protective masculinity, or more rarely, protective femininity in order to make citizens feel safe and secure. I'll also give an example of St. Martin, a country in Northeast Caribbean Sea. On April 1st this year, the Prime Minister of St. Martin addressed her nation's 41,500 people. Coronavirus cases were rising, and the Premier, Silveria Jacobs, knew that the small island country, which welcomes 5 lakh tourists a year, was at risk. It had only 2 ICU beds. Jacob did not want to impose a strict lockdown, but she did want physical distancing observed. So she spelled it out. Simply stop moving. She said, if you don't have the bread you like in your house, eat cereal, eat oats. The 51-year Caribbean Premier may not have the global profile of Angela Merkel or Jacinda of New Zealand, but her blunt message exemplified firm action, effective communication, and showed another female leader getting the job done. The virus has enabled unusual opportunities for women leaders to display forms of protective femininity. While male leaders have built on the role of male head of household and warrior defender in earning their gender performance, women leaders have been able to draw on traditional conceptions of women's role. After all, it is traditionally mothers, not fathers, who look after sick members of the family. There are aberrations though, I don't deny, but these are traditional role taken up by mothers. It is traditionally mothers who take charge of household hygiene and ensure that children and recalcitrant males wash their hands, it is also women who are traditionally caring and empathetic in time of trauma. Media coverage of Arden reportedly mentioned her maternal status. Articles note that she was only the second world leader to give birth in office. In bracket, there are the studies by various social scientists, is a doting mother and world leader, and that her baby Neve is often audible in her Facebook live videos. Like Merkel, she has also been portrayed metaphorically as the maternal protector of New Zealand, where she held Kiwis' hands through the lockdown, blended epidemiology with empathy, law leavened with mom jokes, and after putting her toddler to bed, she empathized with citizens' anxieties. Some of these women-led governments have recently launched an international alliance to promote social and ecological well-being as the cornerstone of their economic policies. As a result, the pandemic has undermined the traditional divide between feminine private sphere and of the home and the masculine public sphere of politics that has traditionally disadvantaged women leaders, allowing them to leverage women's role in the home to their advantage in political sphere. There is a clear need for further analysis going into the question of whether problematic gender stereotypes have been reinforced during the pandemic or whether conceptions of good leadership are now more inclusive of traditionally feminine traits. However, for the moment, women leaders seem to be experiencing a level of appreciation that has rarely been seen before. Resilience, pragmatism, benevolence, trust in collective common sense, mutual aid, and humility are common features of the success of these women leaders. The leaders, women leaders all around the globe who are successful in fighting this pandemic. Future life with COVID-19. Observations by WHO Chief Scientist Soumya Swaminathan. It could become a seasonal virus like the influenza. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, yes, you are audible. Yes, yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so observation by Soumya Swaminathan. It could become a seasonal virus like the influenza virus coming in waves once or twice a year. However, it could also become an endemic. We have already read what is endemic. We know the concept now. Endemic, it will be there with us. Endemic infection in the human population where people continue to get sick, but at a much lower level. The scientists said that a large portion of the population is still under the risk of infection, so it is important to accept this virus as being a part of our lives now and start approaching COVID-19 in a more balanced manner. Countries will now have to start to decide how to balance day-to-day lives without extreme lockdown measures and with enough caution to prevent and spread the disease, she said. People will have to start going to work, children to schools, and all other health problems that have been put on the back burner have to be taken up again. Mounting evidence suggests that coronavirus is airborne, as the chief scientist speaks in an interview. Now, some suggestive measures. What are the key actions states and other stakeholders can take? Effort should be made to ensure women's full and meaningful participation, representation and leadership in local, national and global COVID-19 policy spaces and decision-making, including concerning preparedness, response and recovery, as well as funding and assistance allocation. Media should take steps to better include women and their expertise in their coverage of COVID-19. Ensure that shifting priorities do not have an adverse impact on actors often excluded and particularly impacted by COVID-19, such as those promoting the rights of women, particularly at the grassroots level. Keep gender equality on the agenda and publicly support and recognize the importance of women human rights defenders and ensure that emergency security and other measures are not used as a pretext to attack or silence them. and further shrink their civic space. So the clippings how women frontliners are fighting, how mom is attending, and how we all are working with children and fighting this pandemic simultaneously. Thank you so much for your patience. Thank you.
Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
This has been very, very enlightening and insightful, ma'am. So,
Thank you.
with your due permission, ma'am, can we take up some questions or queries with Rajiv sir's permission as well? Like, can we take up some questions?
Sure, sure.
Yeah. Please
So,
go ahead.
So if anybody has any question or query, you can just write down in the chat box mentioning the name of the resource person to whom the question is indicated to. Please do not forget to mention the name of the resource person in the chat box to whom the question is indicated to.
Rosa, hello.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Acha, there is one thing from someone, Dhanmoni Kolita.
Yes, sir.
He has, I think, put in the chat box.
Yes, sir.
He is writing about a recent article by Yuval Noah Harari, who has discussed
Yes,
under
sir.
the skin surveillance. So he's in the chat box. You can find it there. He has posted it at 4:12 p.m.
Yes, sir. I have seen the question, sir. It says Yuval Noah Harari has discussed under the skin surveillance. So, would you please like to throw some light on this? This is his question, sir.
Okay. Just to save time, can I go ahead? Can I answer it now, or you take all the questions together?
So, I don't see other questions as of now.
Okay. And I don't know whether Dhanmoni is there or not.
So, he's there. He's there. He has just put the question.
To you.
Okay. That's a very interesting question, actually. That's a very interesting question, and in fact, Yuval Noah Harari, he is talking about surveillance, basically under the skin surveillance. In my talk, at one point of time, I tried to bring in a thing, about dystopia. If I can just elaborate a bit, I'll just take 2 minutes. Actually, what has happened is that there is always some audio problem with I think one participant, dogs barking and all. anyway, you see, Yuval Noah Harari, he has been actually also talking a lot about this, how surveillance state is coming in, and totalitarian surveillance is it's there, and he is actually, I think in that article, he is also mentioning that some of the emergency measures which are being undertaken, it might get actually entrenched, it might get fixated, it might get it might become permanent. It might become permanent. So, the surveillance which is there, it might become permanent. And while saying that, he is giving an example. He is giving an example of this KGB in USSR. They tried to, uh, keep all their citizens under surveillance, but they were not able to do that. It's not very possible because at that point of time, they did not have the sort of technology. But today, the technology is there. So, this surveillance, I think that is what he's trying to say. But having said that, I would like to, maybe you will find it interesting as well, because I too have been, looking around for these type of futures which have been drawn by our human mind. Uh, just like utopia is something which we always crave for, which we always, want. And uh, for a very long period, human beings, we have tried to build heaven on earth in a way. We have tried to build heaven on earth. Even Plato wanted to build an enlightened republic, which will be ruled by philosopher kings. That is what he tried to do. And later on, this Thomas More's, novel came, Utopia came in, and this Greek meaning of that is no place actually. That means it suggests that it is impossibility. Then we started to progress. We had, but there was always war, there was pandemic, there was famine, there was oppression, and all of that actually made us think, and actually humans think, that, they started to question utopia, and a new genre of other novels came in, dystopia. Talking of even Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift, I think that was the earliest type of dystopia. Another world which is being projected. And then H.G. Wells, he also talked about the time machine, where he talked that people will become totally different species according to their stature. Then the Brave New World of Aldous Huxley, that is, I think, very important, and where citizens were genetically engineered, and conditioned to perform certain social roles. And then propaganda and drugs, they were given by the state itself, so that the society, they keep happy. But in the process, some of the human elements, they get lost. Why I'm saying this is because what he is trying to project, it comes close to this type of dystopia which have been drawn by different authors. There is another novel called We, by a Russian, Yevgeny Zamayatin. He wrote in 1921. During that time when the surveillance was on, actually, during that when in USSR. In that novel, people were not given names. There is no name, but only codes. People had codes, and they were kept under surveillance. That type of a situation was drawn. Then we know about George Orwell's 1984, which he came out in I think he wrote it in 1953, and he talked about extreme surveillance state, and use of language, use of propaganda by the state. Everything is state managed. Everything, your mind, your thought is actually under the surveillance of the state. Now, I think what Harari is trying to also say is that the type of things which are have been put on force, lockdown means you all stay indoors, you cannot come out, things like that. And there is also, to some extent, this type of surveillance, this type of sort of tops down, I should say, totalitarian regime is becoming a reality, so to say. And let me tell you the last one. I told about, before, at the end of the speech, I told about the Oxfam report, which says that, hunger, which may be, a very important issue. Even I feel very scared when I think of that, because they are saying that there will be around 12,000 deaths per day because of hunger. And it is not that only the Oxfam they are saying, it is the UN report also says that there is going to be extreme hunger. And pandemic is, creating that problem. And there is this dystopian world created by Suzanne Collins, Hunger Games. Hunger Games is also, I think it came in Netflix also, where, there is a competition. There is a competition held during this time of extreme hunger, when some people, accepting a very, very elite, accepting a very, very limited elite, they were, there is a competition held amongst them. So these type of dystopia are becoming, as if, they may become reality. And Sanghamitra has very nicely, very elaborately told about, these gender issues. That is a very, very enlightening talk, and I learned a lot.
No, sir, thank you for kind words. I have learned a lot, rather. No, sir.
You see, there is another dystopia there is another dystopia even for the Handmaid's Tale. The Handmaid's Tale is a another book on dystopia written by Margaret Atwood. She talks about a post-nuclear situation. So there is a nuclear war. After that, the fertility of most of the women, they are lost. But already there is a lot of gender discrimination in the society. A lot of gender crimes are there. But then suddenly some women who has got their fertility intact, they get subjected to a totally different experience, different not good but bad experience. Anyway, so you see this type of dystopia, I think pandemics let us think in different ways. And those people actually also thought in different times. But I shudder to think that some of these dystopian realities, dystopia, they are becoming real, in the real sense of the term. That is what I am really worried about. And what, as he rightly said, Harari, he has been also talking about hacking, because we are so much so much of information we are giving it out to the state and also to these different databases, that we are in a way we are becoming very robotic as human beings. They know what we love, what we hate, what are our emotions. So he is also thinking of a situation where there may be someone sitting somewhere and controlling us. So surveillance under this skin, I think it reflects that fear. Thank you for the time. Actually, I took a lot of time. I thought I will elaborate because I find it very interesting.
Thank you so much, sir. There's a question for ma'am. It says, I want to know your view on role of Indian women leaders. The question is for ma'am, Sanghamitra ma'am.
Yes, yes.
Yes, ma'am. The question says, I want to know your view on role of Indian women leaders.
Indian women leaders. The time has not yet actually come. We can't see any strong results from their side. We have to wait, for this question.
Kerala Health Minister. Tell her about that.
Kerala Health Minister is there. Kerala's Health Minister is there. Yes, Kerala's has. That is why they have reduced but they're not that glaring as Jacinda and others. But yes, sir is right. Kerala's Health Minister, yeah. But they're very less, no? I think in India, quite less in India.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. So due to time constraints, I guess, and I don't see any more questions as well. And due to time constraints, I guess we will have to end the session also. So I would like
we can
to
all compare, maybe, would love to have more questions. Maybe Rosa you can collect the questions. I would love to see more questions, no? And you can mail us the questions.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes. Yes, ma'am. There was one more question, ma'am, which says, what should be the role of civil society during this pandemic period? It was referred to you.
But the civil society is again a very broad concept, no? In Northeast India, only we have varieties of, because it will be a separate webinar actually, no? so because I stay in Sikkim, so Sikkim's case will be different than the case of Assam. Sikkim, they are doing a lot of work. I can give case study from Sikkim. They're coming, they're helping the people, especially they're addressing the senior citizens. And Hendik sir has rightly said that we should use the word physical distancing, not social distancing, no? So if you ask me about civil society, that will be a separate webinar. You organize another webinar, then I'll give a full lecture on that.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So I guess yes, sir. Sure, sir.
I think it has also become very, very important for us. Whatever be, the media, whatever, the media tries to portray and all, I think we have to be, in a way, very, very human. In the real sense, we have to be very, very human. And the type of things which are going on, the type of, for example, as I said, all throughout history, it has happened in many of the pandemics. Minorities have been made the target, and it has happened in some cases here also. The gender is very important. We have to be very, very sensitive towards these issues, and also at least follow what the government is saying. At least follow the norms. Let us wear the mask at least. Distancing, because you see, just maybe 2 days before, in Florida, in the Florida state in USA, people came out actually against mask. And what happened? What was the result? One day after, they had 15,000 cases, 15,300 cases on a single day. At least, as in this pandemic situation, as a society, because the space between the individual and the state, I think that is where the civil society lies. It is not only in different organizations. They do not only consider, they do not only account as civil society. So I think this is important. This is important. We have to be very conscious also, and we have to help in rebuilding the lives, rebuilding the society, and also think about alternatives. Think about alternatives about to how to cope with the situation. Maybe Gandhi has become now.
And empathy is the right, I think it will be the key, no, sir? Empathy. We don't need sympathy, but empathetic. One should be empathetic.
Rosa, I think we have lost connection of Hendrik sir.
Yes, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Please proceed. Please proceed.
Hello?
We
Hello,
should
sir.
also be yes, sorry. Yes, please continue.
Hello?
So shall we sum it up, sir?
Yes, yes.
Hello, ma'am. I just want to say one
Yes,
thing.
yes, sure.
I just want to say one thing that the session was very nice. And one thing I just want to point out that in during this pandemic situation, I mean, now the situation which is going on, I think more than mask and sanitizer, we need to keep ourselves, I mean, our immunity strong.
Thank you, Mr.
I mean, that is
Poddar.
the,
Yes. Okay, so
Thank you,
this
Rosa.
has
Wind
been
it up.
yes, sir. This has been really very insightful. Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you, Rajiv, sir. This has been of great interest to me because my research interest is environmental history, of course, and this will be quite beneficial for me as well. And I'm working on disasters. So this whole pandemic thing will be of, this whole discussion will be of quite help for me. Thank you so much, ma'am. I would now like to
Thank you, Rosa.
request.
We must, sorry, if you are working
Yes.
on disaster, you must come to Sikkim.
Okay, ma'am. Sure, ma'am. I would love to meet you. I have to meet you and talk on this, ma'am.
Rosa, just a second. Rosa, just a second.
Yes, sir.
Actually, I, on behalf of BN College, also invite Dr. Chaudhary to BN College whenever pandemic situation gets over. Sangamita Chaudhary.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for kind words. Thank you, sir. It will be a homecoming for me.
So we'll be very happy. Okay, we'll be very happy if you come. Okay.
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
Rosa. Yes, Rosa, go on.
Okay, so we have come to an end of the session. Yes, I would like to request Honorable Vice Principal, sir, A.M. Mondal, sir, and faculty member of the Department of History to kindly offer the vote of thanks for today's session. Over to Motleb, sir.
Thank you, Roja. Whether you can hear me? Roja?
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir. Sir, you are audible. Yes, sir. You are audible, sir.
Okay. That's from 3 p.m. onwards. We all are enjoying the national webinar, Understanding Pandemic, a Historical Perspective, organized by the Department of History, BN College, Dhuburi. Now, it is the time to conclude the webinar with vote of thanks. Respected Principal Sir, Honorable Resource Person, coordinators of the webinar, Robindra Das, dear participants. First of all, I offer my heartfelt thanks and gratitude to the Honorable Principal, BN College, Dhuburi, who always guided and encouraged us in all respect for the overall development of the internal quality of the college and encouraged us to organize this type of webinar. Next, I offer my heartfelt thanks to Professor Rajiv Hendik, Head of the Department of History, Guwahati University, for his valuable speech. By means of his valuable and resourceful speech and timely presentation and depth of knowledge, make the webinar livelier and successful one. I am going to offer my heartfelt thanks to Professor Sanghamitra Chaudhuri, Assistant Professor, Department of Peace and Conflict Studies and Management of Sikkim Central University, Gangtok, for her resourceful presentation. Again, on behalf of BN College family, I offer my heartfelt thanks and gratitude to both the two resource persons. Finally, I offer my heartfelt thanks to all the participants, both teaching and non-teaching staff of BN College Dhuburi and the participants of various colleges and institutions all over Assam and other parts, along with their students of our college and other colleges. Now, I am going to offer special thanks to Professor Robindra Das, coordinator and assistant coordinator, Dr. Ibrahim Ali Mandal, and special thanks to Dr. Sushmita Sengupta, who always pushing us forward to organize this type of seminar in our college. Lastly, I want to conclude my vote of thanks with thanks to Bappa, the technical assistants, make success this webinar. Thank you all. Thank you very much. Over to Roja.
Thank you so much, sir.
My special thanks to Roja Ahmed as well.
Thank you, sir.
Sorry,
Thank you so much. No, it's all right, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay.
It's a pleasure, sir. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. I also thank everyone. You know, it's a wonderful occasion, very successfully done. And I invite Sanghamitra to our university whenever she, finds the opportunity.
I grew up in the
When we
campus.
find the opportunity also, I will invite her. Huh?
I grew up in
Yes.
Guwahati University campus only. So it will be a homecoming for me.
I think true. You should come. Yeah.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your kind
Thank
invitation.
you very much. Thank you. Yeah. Dr. Chakraborty and everyone. Yeah, it was really great. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I have an announcement for the participants. The feedback links will be sent to respective email IDs. You are supposed to fill up the feedback link and submit the form, after which you will be able to download the e-certificates. And the feedback link will be available only after 9 p.m. It will be sent to the respective email IDs. Also, it will be available in the BN College website, which is www.bncollege.co.in, and will be available only for 24 hours. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we are done, no?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so
Bye-bye.
much, ma'am. Bye, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, ma'am.
So, ma'am. Hello, ma'am.
Hoy, hoy, kok.
So, on behalf of CKB Commerce College Johar family, we want to thank BN College for its lovely initiative, ma'am.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you
Thank you,
so
ma'am.
much.
Hello. Mr. Rajiv.